What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Stack in the Box. I am your host, Reed Wallach, joined as always on Tuesdays with Cody Williams. A lot to get into. I'm not going to bury the lead, though, Cody, because last week, Georgia goes to Doak Walker Stadium and lays a smackdown on Texas, who I was told last Tuesday at around this time, Texas was the runaway clear best team in the country. I pushed back and said, I think it's like kind of up in the air. I think all these teams are kind of flawed, and I don't think Texas should be laying more than a field goal. So what are your thoughts?
So first off, kudos to you. You were right. You won the head-to-head. As I pointed out pre-show, though, didn't really matter because you didn't make up any ground on me in our picks this week.
Yeah, ECU did not win the game outright for the double pick of the week.
No, unfortunately not. But I think the biggest takeaway, and I think what shocked me more than anything, was Carson Beck didn't even play well, and that the Georgia defense is what really shown through in that game. And that was a unit that, coming off the Mississippi State game, coming off what we'd seen against Alabama in that first half, I questioned whether or not that Georgia defense was capable of getting to that kind of national championship caliber level. I think we saw on Saturday that they are more than damn capable of that, because Texas looked like they got hit in the mouth and did not have any answers for it, is quite frankly what it just looked like to me on the field.
Yeah, I think also about Carson Beck, I think he really misses Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey.
Yeah.
And I know this is more forward thinking, like NFL draft stuff, because I see like a lot of people are out on him. He was a possible first overall pick candidate, and now you see Carson Beck. That's not 2 games. I don't think he played well at all on Saturday. Did enough, got the job done, but I think that this Georgia offense has a ceiling that isn't what it was over the last, let's call it 4 years.
Yeah.
We could go back a little bit further, I guess, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. Like this offense is a little bit more limited, but in a year where it looks like nobody is what Georgia was the last few years.
Right.
A really good defense and a still really good quarterback with some timely playmaking, that might be all you need to navigate this college football playoff picture, because there isn't a truly dominant team. All these teams have warts.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think one of my big takeaways with seeing what Georgia's defense did in that game is, I don't think too negatively about Texas. Maybe I agree with you probably more so than I did last week. They are more flawed than I realized. But that's still a damn good football team. And one of the things that Georgia's defense showing up in the way that they did, dominating the way that they did, we haven't seen one of these elite teams, one of these teams in the college football playoff picture kind of dominate at that level against the team of Texas's caliber to this point. So that could be the trump card that Georgia is looking for, that all of these teams are kind of looking for, that I'm not sure there's another trump card in the college football playoff race right now as strong as what I saw from Georgia's defense on Saturday.
I agree. I think that's a good way of putting it. The best thing we've seen of these really high level games might be Georgia's defense. I think maybe Oregon in there and their performance, but even then, that was a high wire act just to beat Ohio State, where Georgia kind of put the clamps on them. And I also think, even though, again, we don't really attribute too much credit to the Georgia offense, they still scored 30+ against both Texas and Alabama on the road. That's still, it's not like this offense has found ways to, or this team has found ways to put points on the board relative to Texas only getting a 15, or I guess Oregon, Ohio State, they put up points. But I think you know what I'm trying to say. Georgia, even in ugly efforts, have been able to at least score with their opponent or outscore their opponent.
No, 100%. And I mean, when I look back at this Texas game, just as an example, what really helps your offense if you're in great field position the entire game. Because there were a lot of drives in that first half where Texas couldn't move the ball. They were 3 and out or 4 and out. It was quick. You were quickly off the field. And Georgia's special teams is very good. And so they were getting positive return yards on a lot of those plays as well. So Georgia won the field position battle running away. And you don't need your offense to be otherworldly if you're starting at the 40-yard line. If you only have a 60-yard drive to get 6 points, that's a huge advantage that they have working in their favor.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's chalk went up to me, but like Cody said, I didn't make up any ground. We will do some picks in a little bit. But let's talk some Heisman Trophy for a little bit, because we're about to hit the stretch run of the college football season. And I think the race is starting to take shape. And it's like, you kind of choose your own avenue, and, it's like a video game, almost like choose your own path. But I think that it's starting to crystallize a little bit. And I guess, Cody, I'll give you first word. Miami beats Louisville. Cam Ward, another monster performance. Dillon Gabriel takes care of business against Purdue. Travis Hunter doesn't even play in the second half because his team is like kind of really good right now.
Right.
So he actually falls in the odds, but Colorado now is starting to really look like a Big 12 title contender. And then Ashton Jeanty, he's on a bye. He has a big game on Friday night, which we're going to talk about. But what is one thing about the Heisman Trophy that stuck out to you from last week? Anywhere you want to go with this?
So I think that one of the things we have on the docket is, which quarterback do you prefer, Dillon Gabriel or Cam Ward? And for me, it's Cam Ward running away. I think that Miami, frankly, if Cam Ward's not on Miami, they're at least a 2-loss team at this point, because he's had to play a lot of heroics because this Miami defense, frankly, might not be that good. And so what Cam Ward has been able to do, the elevated play that we've seen from Cam Ward for what we saw at Washington State, has been kind of astounding. And granted, having the playmakers that they have at Miami does help that cause quite a bit. But Cam Ward, in terms of which quarterback do I think has the best chance to win the Heisman, I think it's Cam Ward kind of running away right now. I am curious, will Ashton Jeanty start to get penalized for playing in the Mountain West, quite frankly? We know the numbers have been otherworldly, and that's why he's still, tied atop of the odds boards with Cam Ward. But I do think, the Heisman is a narrative-driven award. I say that every year. If we're awarding the Heisman to, the best player in college football, it should go to Travis Hunter. But I don't think he's going to have the statistical performance to do that, quite frankly. So I think that when you have Ashton Jeanty, is the narrative going to stay that strong? If, let's say Boise wins this week against UNLV, let's say he keeps putting up big numbers, is that going to be enough because he's at a smaller school to hold off a Cam Ward if Cam Ward's success continues? I don't know the answer to that.
So obviously after the win against Louisville, Miami, that was likely their toughest remaining game from an odds perspective. They are going to be favored in every single one of their games the rest of the season. Dillon Gabriel, the same thing. He's going to be favored in every single one of his games. Cam Ward leads the country in passing yards. He's going to have the statistical resume that's going to mirror some of the other winners in recent history. So I agree with you that I think if I were to say the most likely winner of the award, it's probably Cam Ward at this point in time. I'm not going to rule out Dillon Gabriel because I do think that Miami, like you just mentioned, their defense might not be as good as we think. I think if I were to take a team, I could only have one, and I had to pick a team that's going to run the table. It's Oregon before Miami. Okay. So I think that I still think Dillon Gabriel is in the mix. He is, in terms of statistical, his resume, top 10 in passing, has enough touchdowns. He's behind Cam Ward, no doubt. But in terms of team success, Oregon, number one team in the country, national championship contender. Miami, I still don't know if they're thought of at that level. So I do think Dillon Gabriel's still alive in this. The real thing that I am starting to realize here is I think this is a 3.5-man race.
Okay.
I think it's Ward, it's Gabriel, it's Travis Hunter, and it's kind of Ashton Jeanty. So the more Colorado keeps winning, the more Travis Hunter is going to stay in the limelight, the more people are going to talk about his two-way impact. And I know he had a bad shoulder. He only had 2 catches, but and he didn't play in the second half of the Arizona game. Colorado won that game, I believe, 34-7 at Arizona. Colorado, if you start to look through their schedule's broken a really nice way that there's a conceivable way that they are favored in every single game or not more than a field goal underdog in every game remaining this season. If Colorado's going to win 9-10 games, Travis Hunter might top them all. And that discussion about the best player in the country actually validates around a really good Colorado team, and Travis Hunter can get the nod. You look at his numbers right now. It's obviously tough to quantify a cornerback stats, but I think we could agree that he's an elite cornerback. In terms of his numbers as a pass catcher, he is 9th in receptions. He is pulling it up right now. He's 19th in receiving yards, and he's tied for 17th in receiving touchdowns. Again, that's while playing both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado's going to need Travis Hunter to be on the field to really go the distance here, get to 9-3, get to 10-2, get to the Big 12 championship game. So I do think that Travis Hunter is firmly still in the mix. I actually disagree with his odds drifting too far out. I actually think that he's way more alive than this number. To me, the person that I think is a fade in this market, it's the half in the race. It's Ashton Jeanty, because I believe if Ashton Jeanty does not do both of break Barry Sanders' single season rushing record, which if you include the conference championship game, which Boise State's very likely to make, that'll be 13 games. If you do 13 games and you extrapolate it out, he beats Sanders' record by less than 100 yards. So he's right now right on pace. So he has to keep up what he's been doing. Any sort of slip up, he's not going to break his record. And any sort of slip up in terms of wins and losses, Boise State's not going to make the playoff. I think for Jeanty to win, he needs to A, break the record, Barry Sanders' single season rushing record, and B, Boise State needs to make the playoff. I think when push comes to shove, they are not going to take a group of 5 Boise State running back seriously in this award. So I think it's a 3.5-man race. I didn't necessarily say who I think is going to win, but I was just like kind of laying out. That's where I don't see anybody else really getting into the picture here. Cade Klubnik pales in comparison, easy schedule. Garrett Nussmeier, I think is someone that is somewhat interesting.
Yeah.
But he's got a long way to go and already has a loss and is an underdog this weekend. Anyway, I don't think, especially a year after an LSU quarterback already won, I don't know if Garrett Nussmeier really, really gets into the mix, but I think Garrett Nussmeier is really good. So threw a lot at you there, Cody. What do you think?
So 2 things. One, you bring up a great point with Travis Hunter in that Colorado's, I don't think I'm adequately factoring in Colorado's potential success, because you're right. They are live to make the Big 12 championship game.
I completely underrated how bad the Big 12 is going into the year, because I didn't take Colorado that seriously. The Big 12 is just every team is so close together that Colorado's getting a really nice run out here.
Well, and also the defense, now that Shiloh Sanders is not playing, like the defense has improved a lot. Crazy that when you're not, relying on nepotism, that the defense actually improves on the Colorado side of things. But I agree, like what you're saying there with Travis Hunter, that does make sense. And like I said, it's a narrative award, and the narrative could suit him. Absolutely. With Ashton Jeanty, I see what you're saying. I still think that the numbers could be eye-popping enough, even if he doesn't break the record, to still be more firmly in the mix, particularly if we see Oregon slip up. If we see, like, I think the biggest key, like, I don't necessarily agree with that he has to break Barry Sanders' rushing record, but I do agree that he needs some help. Like, he needs Miami to slip up. He needs Oregon to slip up.
He doesn't control his own destiny.
Correct, yes. And I think
he's behind other people.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the better way to put it. Like, I don't think it necessarily has to be record or no Heisman. Like, I don't think it's necessarily that cut and dry, but you're right. Like, I think the best way to say it is he doesn't control his own destiny. So that's a really good way of putting it. I also had Garrett Nussmeier as like the only dark horse that I'm really considering, because like I think that I don't know if it's the likeliest outcome for sure, but I think at 30-1, where his odds are currently listed at, I think that he has the opportunities in the path. And then I also think it does help him that, yes, their one loss to USC in theory starts to look worse. It was also in the first game of the season. And if you're going to lose a game, the first game of the season is a damn good one to do it in, because people have short memories. People are going to forget 3 months down the line what that looked like. And let's also not forget, Garrett Nussmeier didn't play that poorly in that game. So, like, he put up nice numbers. So, like, I think statistically he can get there. Now he has Texas A&M. He has Alabama coming up on the schedule. He'll have his opportunities, I think, to put up more numbers and to push LSU further in the college football playoff race. I do agree that Jaden Daniels winning last year actually hurts his case. It shouldn't, but it probably does. But I think, like, if you're looking for sleepers, he's the one that has the most value to me right now.
Yeah, and what I think is going to hurt Jeanty's case is if Cam Ward's going to lead the country in passing yards and touchdowns, and Jeanty doesn't set the record, then Jeanty, like, he loses that tiebreaker. Yeah. And how I see this playing out is I think more people are going to gravitate towards the superstardom of Travis Hunter over Ashton Jeanty. So to me, like if those two are going to necessarily like go at it in terms of Heisman love, like I could see people gravitating towards Colorado and seeing what they do. I mean, it's a big showcase game for Jeanty. He has a big game against UNLV. He's probably going to move even shorter in odds. He's currently plus 200 over at FanDuel, but I just think there's a lot of things in his way that need to break his way to really lay plus 200 on October 22nd on a guy to win the Heisman, when I think that there's a lot of things in his way that are stopping him. Just really quick on the Colorado schedule that I said kind of broke their way. I got to pull it up. Colorado, where are you? Colorado schedule.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just trying to vamp while you were looking up the schedule, but I was going to say, like, one thing that looking at Heisman odds this time of year always infuriates me. There needs to be a market for make it to New York, like be a Heisman finalist. Like that needs to be a betting market that we can get in.
Jeanty will be a Heisman finalist. Pretty confident.
Agreed. But I would like, I might like to throw a little flyer on someone like Bryson Daly at Army. He's putting up ridiculous numbers. Oh, come on.
No. He's not going to New York.
He's already in New York. He's in West Point, baby.
All right, so Colorado schedule. They host Cincinnati on ESPN on Saturday night, which always, Colorado plays in these thrilling games. People really, really gravitate towards this team. They're a 5.5-point home favorite. They then get a bye. So you talk about Travis Hunter's shoulder, get a little healthier there. They go to Texas Tech, who probably somewhere in the neighborhood of Texas Tech favored by 1 or 2. Colorado may even be favored in that game. They're then back home against Utah, who is onto their backup quarterback and just let go of their OC. They go back on the road to play at Kansas, who is 2-5 on the season. And they close home on Friday. I imagine that's going to be like a big noon kickoff type deal. Home Friday, Oklahoma State, who's a dead team walking. So there is a world, let's call it 4-1. You're 9-3. Maybe Big 12 title hopes aren't there, but that's 9-3 with a two-way superstar, a guy like Travis Hunter. I think that's real. Like 9-3 Travis Hunter versus 10-2 Ashton Jeanty. Assuming Jeanty doesn't break the record, I think people are going to be all over Travis Hunter, dying to give him some acknowledgement instead of Ashton Jeanty.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And like you said, like people are going to gravitate. Eyes are going to be on Travis Hunter. Like just because the Big 12 is what it is, like that's not going to take eyes away from Colorado. So people are going to be watching it. The bye, like you mentioned, is really advantageously placed for Travis Hunter to get healthy and kind of make that final push in the Heisman race. So yeah, if you're, especially with his odds slipping, if you're going to bet the Heisman market, like you said, on October 22nd, which, I kind of like to wait until November personally a little bit till I start, really seeing where the value is for me. But if you're going to place a bet, I think Travis Hunter is the best place to put your money right now.
I agree. That's someone whose odds, in my opinion, can shrink. So some good stuff there on the Heisman market. Let's talk some week 9. Before we do that, Cody, you want to tell us about our sponsor, Underdog?
Of course, man. Yeah, it's the greatest time of year again. Football's here. It's been back, and it's not going anywhere. It's here to stay till February, dude. And over 1 million fans across 33 states got in the game last year by making their picks on Underdog. I personally love Underdog. It's easy and fast to get started and play, and there's also a multitude of options for your picks every week when you're looking at these games. Listen to us talk about them. This week, I like Indiana backup quarterback Taven Jackson higher than 1.5 touchdowns against Washington. He's filling in for Curtis Rourke. Washington's defense, not very confident in it. And we saw Taven Jackson come in and throw 2 TDs late against Nebraska last week. So I like the higher there. Making picks on Underdog, though, it's straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com. Sign up with the promo code STACKINGTHEBOX. That's one word, Stacking the Box. And Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code STACKINGTHEBOX, one word, to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit bonus offer. Must be 18 and over, 19 and over in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 and over in Colorado for some games, 21 and over in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783 or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. Underdog Fantasy, man. It's good stuff. Sign up with the code Stacking the Box.
That was a hell of an ad read, Cody. Great job. So
thanks, man.
Let's talk some week 9 college football. I am 17-23 on my picks. And Cody is 20-21, hanging around 500. So we got, I think, the first kind of like meh slate in a few weeks. I feel like we've been treated to some banger slates. This one, a bit of a reprieve. Not that it's not important. Every week seems to be gaining in importance, but in terms of like the real high leverage games, it feels like this one's lacking a few of those that we've been treated to over the last few weeks.
No, 100%. I mean, part of that is teams letting us down a little bit. Like Alabama, Missouri should have been a big game, and Missouri's looked like dog water, and we've seen Alabama struggle the past 3 weeks. So like that definitely plays a factor in it. One game we're not picking that I am intrigued by, at least I don't think it's going to result in a lot of chaos, but like Illinois, Oregon, that's a game that has at least a little bit of intrigue based on what Illinois has been able to do, but Oregon is a heavy favorite in that game. I believe it's 21.5 is the line right now. And so like, we're not talking about that game, but like, you're right. I think just by the construct of some of these teams being a little bit of a letdown, and there's always the calm before the storm, and the storm is definitely next week.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've seen almost like a reshuffling of different teams here. Like Kansas State has kind of lost a little bit of its luster, but Texas Vanderbilt all of a sudden is a bigger game and has 10 P Kids says Navy moneyline. We're going to talk some Navy Notre Dame. That is another one that has all of a sudden become a huge game on the Saturday week 9 card. So before we get to Navy Notre Dame, let's talk some Boise State UNLV Friday night, 10:30. I would say very likely a preview of the Mountain West Championship game. So likely the first of 2 games between 2 teams competing for the college football playoff. We mentioned Ashton Jeanty and his Heisman hopes. Cody, you are up on the scoreboard right now. I got to do some catching up. So let me hear your handicap before I give you mine.
Yeah, so let me start by saying I think UNLV is a little bit over fraudulent. Or a little bit fraudulent. Sorry, I was reading a comment that says over, seems highly probable. But I think they're a little bit fraudulent. Like, in my estimation, they played one good team this entire year. One team that I would actually say is pretty good. And that was Syracuse in Las Vegas, and they lost in overtime. Granted, it was by 3, so Boise State wouldn't cover that. But I'm picking Boise State to cover -3.5 in this game. I think that UNLV, their rush defense is a little bit buoyed by the level of competition that they played, and it's still only the 75th graded run defense, according to PFF. Boise State, not shockingly, is the highest grading rush offense in the country. I do think that the over is highly probable. I think that both of these teams are going to be able to score because I do not have a whole lot of faith in Boise's defense, but I do think Boise's defense has shown some signs of improvement, and I think that UNLV with Malik Williams, I think they present a unique challenge, but I also think that they do have a limited ceiling when they face a team that's going to be able to control the tempo and control the game script that I think Boise State will be able to against this UNLV defense. So I really come down to, I think that Jeanty is the X factor in this game to be able to control the tempo, control the game script, and put UNLV in a position where they're uncomfortable. And so that's why I'm going with Boise State on the road to cover this number at 3.5.
So I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay, let's do it.
I think that Boise State's being a little overrated. I think both teams have kind of beat up on some iffy opponents. But what sticks out to me in this one is UNLV's improvement on the defensive side of the ball this season, and Barry Odom bringing in some power forward talent. And my question is, and 10P kids. I'm gonna bring up the UNLV Oregon State game in just a bit. But what I think is worth noting here is UNLV's defensive line. Top 25 in tackles for loss, top 15 in sacks, overall allowed 3.35 yards per carry. If Ashton Jeanty isn't able to get this team ahead of schedule, what if the game comes down to Maddox Madsen, something he has not really had to do this entire season? Obviously, much was made when Boise State went with Maddox Madsen over Malachi Nelson, the USC transfer. This season, Madsen, he's been fine. He's also completing 50% of his passes that are more than 10 yards down the field. He has 3 big-time throws to 7 turnover-worthy plays this season. So I do think if Jeanty isn't able to rip off explosive runs, this could be kind of a tricky, where is Boise State getting margin? Tempe Kids brings up UNLV struggling against Oregon State. 100%, definitely did. But they also had, I believe it was 5 sacks in the second half against Oregon State and got it done. It was a close call, no doubt. But you look at where Oregon State ranks, that's also a pretty potent rush offense. So, look, can Jeanty have a big game? Absolutely. I just don't know if he's running wild in this game and running for 200 yards. And maybe that's where this comes on Maddox Madsen, and that's where maybe this game's a little bit closer. One other thing, I'm not glossing over the fact that Boise State can win this game, and maybe this is something like the Syracuse game from a few weeks ago where UNLV scored like 40 points on 40 offensive plays, and Syracuse scored, 46 on 85. So maybe it's more methodical, but I do think UNLV is going to be able to hit explosives, stay in this game against what I think is a pretty bad Boise State defense. Yeah. Number 1 in the country in sacks, but outside the top 120 in both explosive run and pass rate. So this UNLV offensive line can keep Heisman Williams upright. I think they're going to be some deep shots here. So big game for Ricky White. I think UNLV might be the better team. So I took the points with UNLV.
I will say one thing that stood out to me about UNLV that has my attention at least a little bit, and it's not the Oregon State game. It is the Utah State game the week prior. And Utah State, who I am going to talk about here in a little bit, truly horrendous defensively, like ungodly bad defensively. But their DBs were actually able to cover UNLV's receivers a little bit. UNLV's receivers made a lot of great catches. They have a talented receiver corps, but they were 50-50 balls that they were making catches against. Boise State, I agree with you. Like their defense, even though I think it has improved, I think it's improved from dog water to below average. So it's a marginal improvement, but I do think they do have some talent on the outside. Maybe those throws go into turnovers. And when you have an offense that I think we both kind of see it the same way in that I think we see some explosives. I think we see some not a whole lot of stops in this game, quite frankly. I think
high total, 66.5.
Yeah. And I think that's why we're probably staying away from it, is because it is a high total. And those are always, a little scary from the betting perspective. But I do think that we do see explosives. I think we see quality offense and not so quality defense. I do think turnovers could be key. And if UNLV receivers aren't able to separate, what is the likelihood that they keep winning these 50-50 balls constantly as Heisman Williams throws them up?
I mean, regression always a thing, especially with turnovers, but UNLV top 5 in the country in turnovers gained this season. Boise State checks in 117th at 5. So maybe this is a game where you see some regression in that regard, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on, and definitely something, one short field could, flip this game upside down, especially if, both teams are going to be going up and down the field.
100%. And I think it's pretty fitting that we're split on this one, because this is going to be a good game and it could go either way, because both teams do have advantages that they can take advantage, they can use to win this game. So I'm happy we're split on this one.
We move on to LSU, Texas A&M, potentially I don't know if it's a college football playoff eliminator, but definitely one where the winner is looking chalk to get in. I wouldn't say it's an elimination game, but it's almost like an entrance exam into the college football playoff. If the winner of this game will really be in the driver's seat to control their own destiny to the CFP. A&M laying only 2.5 at home after beating Mississippi State, maybe a little bit closer than expectation. LSU, meanwhile, they followed up their Ole Miss win with a resounding win on the road at Arkansas. Cody, what are your thoughts here?
I'm going LSU to cover on the road plus 2.5, man. Quick quiz for you, Reed. Who's the best passing offense that A&M has played this season? Is it Arkansas? Is it Mizzou? Is it Mississippi State?
I would say Missouri.
Okay. We've seen this Missouri passing offense look pretty mediocre quite a lot of the season. And I think the point what I'm saying here is that LSU is quite a bit better of a passing offense than there. When you look at Texas A&M's defensive stats, they are 23rd in defensive EPA per dropback. I think that is an inflated number based on level of competition. I think that LSU is going to be able to come into this game and throw the ball in there because when you dig into the numbers a little bit more, Texas A&M only the 80th graded coverage unit according to PFF this year. I think Kyron Lacey has a big game and is able to get open for a lot of explosive plays. The other thing that stands out to me, Garrett Nussmeier, I've been high on him all season coming into the year. He was kind of a sleeper for the Heisman even coming into the year. And he's gotten better. And what I've seen the past 2 weeks has been really impressive. This LSU offensive line has not played as well as I thought they were going to coming into the year, particularly on the interior. But one of the things Garrett Nussmeier, who's not the most mobile guy, has really grown into doing is evading pressure and staying in the pocket and getting back on platform and throwing. He took 0 sacks against Ole Miss and he took 0 sacks against Arkansas, despite the fact that they got pressure on him. So I think the fact that Texas A&M is probably going to get pressure on him, I think Nussmeier has absolutely graduated in terms of his ability to evade pressure and still make plays and keep the offense functional and not take negative plays. I think that's going to be a real problem for Texas A&M. And I know you're going to push back on this. I'm well aware of what I'm about to say you do not agree with. But I think this LSU defense has improved noticeably. I think that they are absolutely a much better unit than they were at the start of the season. I think the fact that they were able to take on a Bobby Petrino offense in Fayetteville last week and hold them to 10 points, even with Taylor Green being limited, I understand that he did not look 100%. The fact that you're able to go up against a scheme that is that potent and a scheme that has caused other team problems and shut them down, I think that says a lot about what this LSU defense has done in terms of improvement. I also do not trust Connor Wegman. The point blank period, I do not trust Connor Wegman at all. I think he's liable to make some poor decisions, let's say it that way, and I think it's going to keep LSU well within striking distance and probably ahead in this game because I think LSU wins this game outright.
10P Kids checks in, says waiting for Texas A&M to lay an egg at some point like they always do. This might be the game. So I'm taking Texas A&M. The more I dug into this one, I think LSU's getting a really big bump here. I think, and look, I was on LSU against Ole Miss. Really, really advantageous setup for them with Ole Miss playing their 7th straight game. They win that game. They go to Arkansas where Taylor Green did not look healthy. Jaquindon Jackson went down early in that game. And you look at what happened in that game, and it was kind of my concern with where LSU's going this season. I know Caden Durham ran for over 100 yards, but this team still put together an average EPA per rush in that game. And overall, this run game has not been all that great. They rank 86th in EPA per rush on the year, 66, right at the national average in terms of yards per carry. Really just unable to get explosive plays, both through the air and on the ground. Outside the top 100 in explosive rush and pass rate. They really thrived against Arkansas. They had a short field. They got up early. They kind of sat on it. Arkansas's best running back goes down. Taylor Green, their quarterback, is hurt. So I didn't leave that game super moved by LSU in a game that was kind of over in the first 20 minutes. Arkansas got game scripted out of that one. They now go on the road to face Texas A&M, who at the very least, I think could keep this LSU defense on its toes, or on its heels, I should say. Mm-hmm. A&M's offensive line has been absolutely fantastic all year, 11th in line yards, top 20 in terms of yards per carry. And while Connor Wegman did struggle at Miss State, back at home against an LSU defense that I still think, while getting better, is still, in the grand scheme of things, they're an SEC defense. They're probably above average, but they're closer to middle of the pack in terms of SEC ranks. So I think at home, I actually do think A&M's the better team because I think that they've proven against Missouri, especially, a healthy Connor Wegman can move the ball down the field, and they have a really good running game between Amari Daniels and Le'Veon Moss. So I think this A&M offense can be able to move the ball. And on defense, I am concerned about A&M secondary, but I also trust Mike Elko as a defensive coordinator to scheme this up. And if LSU's not able to run and it's going to be 3rd and 7. It's going to be 3rd and medium. Nussmeier's going to have to throw. I actually trust A&M to at least scheme up some stops and really give Nussmeier some different looks, because I think that this will be the most talented defense he has seen to date. And one last note, we're looking for like determinant of the game. A&M is tied for 19th in the country in terms of 3rd down success rate. LSU is 110th on the defensive side of the ball. I think A&M is going to be able to stay on the field. I think they're going to be able to generate more scoring opportunities. And they cash in, they get this done. I'll call it 27-23 gig 'em.
I see what you're saying. However, in terms of A&M staying on the field, I think we've seen plenty of games in our college football lives where you have a team that's trying to move methodically and you have a team that's ripping off explosives. Let's say Mike Oko does not have the answers because the secondary is just not up to snuff to cover this LSU offense, this passing offense. LSU rips off explosive play, 3-play, 75-yard drive. And then
they haven't done that though this year. That really hasn't been their MO.
And that's fair. That's completely fair. But I do think that this Texas A&M defense is susceptible to that. I think that is entirely possible that we see that in this game. And I think that for me, I'm reading too much into the Arkansas game, but what I've seen from Arkansas's defense, I don't think Arkansas's defense in terms of what they've been able to do is that far removed from what Texas A&M has been able to do on the defensive side of the ball. And the fact that LSU was able to script Arkansas out of that game as quickly as they were, granted, that had a lot to do with Arkansas's offense, and I do expect Texas A&M to have a better performance than that. I just think that LSU, I think they're being underrated. I think people are reading way too much. Like, I think there is still some that loss to USC bias, frankly, playing into this team, whereas – and the South Carolina game as well, to be clear. But I think they are a much better, much different team based on what I've seen from Nussmeier, based on what I've seen from the defense. And, the run game has not necessarily been a strength by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think it has gotten at least to where defenses have to respect it. It's not just like a non-factor completely. And I think that's quite important.
We'll see. I'm making a serious push here on this is the week where I got to get back into the mix. Let's talk about hopefully 10P Kids is still in the chat because we are talking Notre Dame Navy live from MetLife Stadium on Saturday. Navy undefeated. The new look offense has been humming along. This is going to be their first real test, though. Playing a Notre Dame team. Yes, they have the loss, but this is still a bona fide college football playoff contender. Notre Dame now, this is a real opportunity for them to get back into the good grace of in the future with the selection committee against an undefeated Navy team. Neutral field, a lot of intrigue. These two met opener last year in Dublin, Ireland. I think it was Dublin, in Ireland, and Notre Dame kicked their teeth in. Do you see Navy getting revenge for that one, or is it more the same in Notre Dame rolls? You got Notre Dame laying 13 total, 51.5, we'll call it.
I don't know. I mean, I personally would probably lean the Notre Dame side on this one, but where I lean more heavily is over 51.5. I think Navy is able to score in this game far better than they did last year. This is a much better team. This is a much better offense, much better scheme. I think that the fact that Navy hasn't played anybody really this season is going to be quite evident with what Riley Leonard and this offense are capable of doing. I think that Notre Dame's offense isn't a world beater. We know that. We're well aware of that. But I do think that their ability to run the ball, the level of athlete that they're going to be able to just push around in the trenches, I think is going to give Notre Dame a big advantage when they're on offense. And I think Notre Dame kind of moves the ball at will in this game. As long as they don't revert into bad habits like the Northern Illinois game and just try to throw it all over the yard, because that's not what Riley Leonard is good at. So I do think Notre Dame is able to score. On the flip side of that, though, I do think Navy is going to be able to find more success than we might be expecting. The Irish are 34th in run defense grade, according to PFF. But one, that's boosted a little bit based on the last 2 weeks where they had grades over 86 against Stanford and Georgia Tech without Haynes King. You're pretty much able to sell out the run and sell out against the run in both of those matchups. So I think that grade is slightly inflated. They're probably more closer to average among FBS teams. On top of that, they weren't defending the option. And I know that they have 2 option teams on their schedule. They played Army and Navy this year, but that's not something that they've been preparing for outside of this week in practice. So that does present some challenges with the way this Navy offense is operating. I do think Navy is able to rip off some explosives, especially without Benjamin Morrison on the outside. So I think Navy's able to do their part, and I see this game kind of being played in the high 50s, maybe even low 60s. Notre Dame doing the heavy lifting in that, to be sure, but I do think that we do see quite a good amount of points in this game.
I was just scrolling through on my phone trying to find the best offense that Navy has faced this season, and I couldn't find it.
There isn't a good one, dude.
It's really, it's a murderer's row here of teams that they faced. And it's not that Navy's bad, because I think I did on the show, I took Navy money line against Memphis.
Yeah.
And I was in on that one. So Memphis is the best offense. I was being somewhat tongue-in-cheek. Memphis was the best offense, but also Memphis' defense in bottom half of the country, they didn't have the ability to slow them down. I do think Notre Dame presents a different type of test for Navy on both sides of the ball. But where I really think that this game is going to be decided, and like you mentioned, I think Notre Dame is going to be able to name their number here. And I actually do think there is some incentive for Notre Dame to run it up. This is a showcase game for them. This is an undefeated Navy team. If Notre Dame has the opportunity late to bolster their score line, to look better when it is late November and the committee's talking about a one-loss Notre Dame, who without a doubt will have the worst loss of any contending team, the loss to Northern Illinois at home, they're going to look back and say, oh, well, look at what they did to a Navy team that we have to respect. So I actually do like Notre Dame. I think they cover, but I don't want to go near it. My preference is their team total, which is 32.5. I think Notre Dame can put together 5 touchdowns. Navy's defense has looked really sharp, but I just mentioned they haven't really faced a good offense just yet. I'll just rattle off their 6 games. They played FCS Bucknell. They played Temple. They played Memphis. We'll get back to them in a minute. At UAB, at Air Force, Charlotte. So, and I know Tempe Kid isn't a fan of Marcus Freeman. And me and Cody, while we like Notre Dame, notice we aren't skewing towards taking laying the points here. We want to try and find some other ways to get in on Notre Dame because, maybe Notre Dame isn't a team worth betting to get margin. So let's just go back to that Memphis game really quick. Navy wins 56-44. I think Notre Dame is going to be able to put up points in this one. I need 5 touchdowns. The real key in this one is Navy's defensive line just is not there at all. 122nd in defensive line yards. They are consistently getting pushed back. So I actually think while Notre Dame's offensive line has been banged up all year, this is not where they're going to be exposed in that regard. Right. Navy's defense is, this is kind of a departure from what they have been. Only 37 tackles for loss. That's 78th in the country. They're 74th in yards per play allowed. So I agree with you. I think Notre Dame can run this up. Look, maybe Navy hits a few gadget downfield throws. Personally, I think Notre Dame is a little bit too sophisticated for that. It has a level of athlete that could sniff it out. But I do think that this will be a higher scoring game. And for Navy to cover, they need to, send it over the total because I think Notre Dame could definitely get into the high 30s here.
No, 100%. And full disclosure, I wanted the team total. I didn't want to be on the exact same thing as you, so I just went for the game over. But I do think Navy is able to put something up there. But again, I think Notre Dame does most of the heavy lifting. I would not be surprised, honestly, if they got this into the 40s. Because like you said, they are incentivized to get margin because not only are they going to have the worst loss of any playoff contender, but they also don't have a conference championship game to boost them at the end of the season. So style points matter for Notre Dame more than they do any other team in the country. This is one of the games where you have the opportunity to get style points, especially with the USC game looking like it's not going to be a game to get style points, looking like a game that might just be ho-hum, don't lose it. So I do think this is a moment where this Notre Dame team has to come out and be aggressive. I legitimately would not be shocked if they approached the 51.5 total by themselves.
You say that, and then I think about it, Navy, their ability to slow this game down, run clock. But with Notre Dame's defensive line, they might be able to shut down this triple option completely and get off the field much quicker and have, maybe even potentially short fields. 1 3 and out could be dismal for this team. there's been no explosives given up. Overall 13th in success rate. So maybe Notre Dame could get a few short fields, maybe get some quick 3-and-outs and get the ball back in Riley Leonard's hand. So we see this game eye to eye. Let's move on to our two staple picks. We came up short last week with our upset picks. My ECU, whatever we want to call it, double up, big underdog did not come through. So we kind of got to get back on track here. We're both looking, we'll call it mild long shots. Not like crazy like ECU last week, but definitely not your little 3-point underdog here. So where are you looking this week for our upset picks?
Yeah, I'm going to South Alabama, where UL Monroe is on the road, and as an underdog, they are plus 235 on the money line. And give me the Warhawks, man. I think that, listen, it's not been pretty for UL Monroe to get to 5-1. They like to ugly things up. They like to muck it up. But I just don't think that this South Alabama team, I think the numbers are lying to you. Gary Parrish of Eye on College Basketball for CBS Sports, he likes to call teams computer trickers in college basketball. And I think South Alabama might be a computer tricker, because when you look at their grades, when you look at their EPA numbers, and you look at their success rate, that 87-10 win over Northwestern State is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for what this team has been capable of. When they've been up against teams that have been able to muck it up, I think the best example that we've seen was Arkansas State, who beat them 18-16. This team has looked a little discombobulated with what they're capable of doing with Gio Lopez in this offense. I think UL Monroe's defense is more than capable of being able to slow them down and muck it up and get them in the game script that they want to be in, which is kind of just clawing and scratching their way on offense to positive field position and things of that nature. The fact that I don't think either of these teams separate themselves from one another all that much. So the fact that the line is at 7.5 and I'm getting plus 235 on the money line, I'm going to take the team that's had more success executing their game script this season, which I think is UL Monroe in this matchup.
So I was going to put this in our Sickos segment, ULM plus 7.5. I completely agree with you. I watched that South Al Troy game from last week.
Yeah.
Pretty unimpressive performance from South Alabama on that one. Maybe you're onto something with and you look back, the App State win, not aging super well, like that blowout win that kind of put App State on the map. So maybe you're onto something here. And I mean, it's a low total, so, always preference for the dog there. And like on a standard down-to-down perspective, South Alabama, the team is all about big plays. They want to rip off explosives, and that's what ULM has really done a good job of limiting. Top 20 in both explosive rush and pass rate. So if you keep this team, in third and long, all of a sudden, maybe this Gio Lopez, Fluff Bothwell offense doesn't hum as much. So I don't hate that look at all. Mine, mentioned it before with Texas A&M. Miss State is starting to string together a few quality performances here.
They are.
Let's go Miss State to win the game outright. It's first-year head coach Jeff Lebby. It looks like this team is playing for something. Not that they're very good, but this isn't your typical 1-6 team at this point in the season. Meanwhile, Arkansas, I mentioned some of their injuries starting to mount. Taylor Green still banged up clearly. Jaquindon Jackson, very questionable, probably more doubtful than probable. If he doesn't go, this Arkansas offense definitely takes a hit. And you look at where Arkansas is in terms of their schedule and where the team's currently at as I pull up their schedule. Arkansas, they come out of so before their bye week, they play Tennessee. They get that big win, big upset win. Now you come out of the bye, like maybe you could announce yourself as like a legitimate bowl team, mid-tier SEC team. You kind of get knocked down against LSU. Arkansas, after this, they go back home to play Ole Miss. You're on the road to play 1-6 Miss State. Like, are you really going to show out in this one? Are you really going to get a full effort? Whereas Miss State, since going to Van Buren, the freshman quarterback, up and down player, but he chucks it around the yard. Average up the target is 12 yards per pass attempt. So he's not afraid to push this down the field. And if you want to look where Arkansas could be potentially vulnerable, it is against the pass instead of the run. They are right around the national average in terms of EPA per pass. maybe this is just like a sleepy spot for Arkansas and they get caught. I just like where this Mississippi State team is trending. Cover against Texas, cover against Georgia, cover against Texas A&M. Like really just competing in these games. I think they're due for a win sooner or later. I think they get one SEC win this year. Why not on Saturday?
Hey, I really don't hate this look at all, because the other thing that I've noticed with Mississippi State, and I didn't dive into this game quite yet in terms of the numbers, but just anecdotally looking at what they did last week against Texas A&M and the week prior against Georgia, the defense is not good, to be clear, but they are good at creating a little bit of chaos. They are good at like trying to, make like the all or nothing type of play. And if Taylor Green isn't 100%, Taylor Green is not the most secure player I've ever seen with the football. So like there's a chance that Mississippi State could get this game into a very positive script for them, especially with this game in Starkville, which Mississippi State fans, like, yes, this is a down season. They still show up for their team, and especially in a game that looks like they could potentially have a chance to win, those cowbells are going to be ringing. And, like, we'll see what happens there.
It feels like this is kind of a departure from where Arkansas has been priced all year.
Yeah.
I mean, they closed at what, like a 1-point dog against LSU at home. Now you're on, which like was an upgrade given they were catching 2 touchdowns against Tennessee 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Now they're on the road laying north of touchdown. Like this is not where Arkansas typically is priced. And I know it's because Miss State's terrible, but I don't know. I just think Miss State's trending in the right direction. It's, I think, a play on team for the coming weeks. Sickos pick. We got real nasty with this one. You're looking at Utah State, Wyoming. What's your favorite play in this one?
Give me the over 57, dude. I mentioned earlier, Utah State's defense is truly horrendous, and I really don't think that they're capable of playing anything other than a shootout. Here are the final point totals for Utah State's last 5 games. 95, 84, 92, 74, and 59. You know what all 5 of those numbers have in common, Reed? They're more than 57. They're more than 57. And it's not surprising. Utah State is 131st in defensive success rate. They rank outside of the top 120 in both against the rush and pass in terms of success rate defensively. Wyoming's offense is terrible. Don't get me wrong. But I truly believe that anyone can put up at least a decent number against this Utah State defense. Like, I think this is the cure-all for whatever your offense is trying to go through. And on the flip side of that, Wyoming's defense isn't good, but they are better than Utah State, 103rd in defensive success rate. But where they struggle is against the pass, where they're 124th in defensive success rate. Utah State's offense, 34th in success rate on dropbacks. I think that Utah State reels off a lot of explosives in this one and is able to put up a big number on Wyoming. And on the flip side, I think Wyoming is probably able to put together their best offensive performance of the season. I think this game is played in the 60s or 70s, not at 57.
10P Kids chimes in, says he'd rather watch FCS game than that one. I definitely agree. This is like a movable force meets a stoppable object when because the Wyoming offense is in dire straits, but we'll see if they can find some answers against Utah State. For me, I mentioned I was maybe looking at ULM South Alabama for the Sickos pick. One that just kind of I can't seem to get to this number. Western Michigan laying 16.5 against Kent State. 3 weeks ago, Western Michigan was laying 10 at Ball State. Now you're basically getting the same price when you flip for home field against a Kent State team that is definitely worse than Ball State, was a home dog to Ball State since that game. Western Michigan, I know they nearly blew the game against Buffalo last week. I was actually on them. This Western Michigan offense, for my money, is the best offense in the MAC. The defense leaves some to be desired, but where is Kent State putting up the points to keep this up? I think Western Michigan, maybe it's more like looked at the team total more than the point, laying the points here. Because I get it is 3 possessions with a not so good defense. Maybe they can't close the job or seal the deal, whatever you want, whatever cliche you want to use. But I think Western Michigan can definitely win this one by 3 scores. You look at even last week, Kent State was catching, I believe it was 3 touchdowns against, let me pull up that point spread really quick, against Bowling Green. They lose 27-6. Bowling Green let's see, what was the point spread in that game? 20.5. So they don't cover, actually. They lose 27-6, outgained in that game, 434-204. But now you're getting more basically a field goal difference. You're getting inside it now 17, another key number on the point spread. I like Western Michigan here to just run it up on Kent State. I don't think Kent State obviously is any good. As 10P Kids, who's been here all episode, thanks for tuning in, man. Kent State lost to St. Francis, PA, who is terrible as an FCS team. So I think Western Michigan can run this up here.
No, 100%. I mean, the fade Kent State principle is growing stronger by the day. Like, I'm pretty sure that you and I could walk on at Kent State right now. Like, if we have eligibility left, that might be our next career move.
Kent State is 2-5 against the number. I'm sorry, I misspoke. They were plus 24 against Bowling Green, so they did cover. But again, touchdown downgrade to Western Michigan here. That's where you're kind of losing me here on taking the Golden Flashes. I knew that number wasn't right. But anyway, 27-6. The point still stands, though. You're now getting a touchdown decrease. I think Western Michigan could definitely run this up. And yeah, I could probably play like a nice little slot receiver for the Golden Flashes this season.
I think we're both built like slot receivers and not anything else for sure. Maybe punters. I'll go out there and punt.
No, I was never good at soccer, so I can't. Or I didn't play football, so I was definitely never good at soccer, so I can't punt for anything. But Cody, great episode as always. We got some good head-to-heads here. Hopefully, I can make up some ground or just punt until bowl season and the bowl extravaganza is where I'll try and redeem myself. But Cody, why don't you recap your picks before we get out of here?
All right, so I got Boise State minus 3.5 on the road at UNLV. I've got LSU minus 2.5 at Texas A&M. In Notre Dame Navy, I've got the over 51.5. Upset pick, give me UL Monroe plus 235 on the money line at South Alabama, a team I don't believe in. And then Sickos pick, and I'm with 10P Kids here. I'm gonna watch it because I'm gonna have some hard-earned money on it, but it is a gross game. The definition of a Sickos pick, give me the over 57 in Wyoming versus Utah State.
Yeah, great episode. As I said, for me, we got some head-to-heads here. I got UNLV plus 3.5 on Friday night. Took A&M minus 2.5 against LSU. I took the Notre Dame team total over 32.5. Mississippi State outright plus 225 against Arkansas. And then Western Michigan minus 16.5 against Kent State. If you missed earlier, make sure to sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code STACK in the box for an $1,000 first wager when you sign up. Match that. Great stuff on the Heisman, Cody. Great stuff as always. We said maybe a little bit of a lull relative to the last few weeks, but maybe that's just a setup for another chaotic week in college football.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead and take the Illinois and Vanderbilt money lines is what I'm hearing.
Great episode. We will be back same time next Tuesday for the lives. We'll be in your podcast feed. Until then, enjoy the college football games, and we will see you next Tuesday.
We'll see you.